Number 1. Marie Walsh. In 1974, 19-year-old Susan Lefebvre, now known as Amory Walsh, was arrested during an undercover drug operation in Thomas Township, Michigan. She pleaded guilty to conspiracy and violation of drug laws, receiving a sentence of 10 to 20 years. After serving approximately 14 months at the Detroit House of Corrections, she indicated that other inmates were threatening her and decided to make plans to escape the prison. Lefebvre escaped in February 1976 after walking past an open yard. She threw her jacket over the 20-foot barbed wire fence and climbed over to the other side, where her grandfather and another relative were waiting for her nearby, facilitating her getaway. After she escaped, she took a new identity of Marie Walsh. She relocated to California, where she married and raised 3 children. Her past remained concealed even to her husband of 23 years until someone tipped off the police, and she was arrested in April 2008. Following her extradition to Michigan, Lefebvre pleaded guilty to escape charges and was sentenced to probation in September 2008. She served an additional 13 months in prison before being released in May 2009. She was on the run for over 32 years. Number 2. Ellen Renee Goel. In August 2021, 24-year-old Ellen Renee Goel was incarcerated at the Randolph County Jail in Missouri. She was in jail for multiple charges, including resisting arrest, burglary, substance possession, and operating a vehicle without a valid license. Few months later, on August 28, 2021, an opportunity to escape came when Goel was moved to a different cell for cleaning purposes. Seizing this chance, she impersonated another inmate who was scheduled for release that morning. Goel, bearing a strong resemblance to the other inmate in height, weight, and eye color, used this similarity to her advantage. She managed to gather enough information about the other inmate and kept her head down during the release process and signed the release documents using the other inmate's forged signature and successfully walked out of the jail. She also took the inmate's credit card and other items. The escape went unnoticed until breakfast was served. Other inmates informed the jail staff that Goel had left the facility under false pretenses, prompting a head count that confirmed her absence. Sheriff Aaron Wilson acknowledged that newer employees, unfamiliar with all inmates, were on duty during the incident, contributing to the oversight. After 9 days on the run, Goel turned herself in to authorities. Following her return to custody, she faced additional charges of escape, and a $10,000 cash-only bond was set for these new charges. Number 3. Destiny Marie Guns. In April 2019, 22-year-old Destiny Marie Guns was detained at the Las Colinas Detention and Reentry Facility in Santee, California. She had been arrested on April 1st for possession of a stolen vehicle and had prior convictions for shoplifting and other theft-related offenses. On April 6, 2019, at approximately 5:35 p.m., Guns was escorted for a medical examination within the facility. Following the exam, she saw an opportunity to escape when the security guards were not looking, and managed to escape by scaling multiple fences and walls surrounding the jail. Her inmate clothing was later discovered in an open field near the facility, indicating she may have changed attire to avoid immediate detection. Police dogs tracked her scent to the back of a nearby shopping center before losing the trail. After 6 days on the run, Guns was apprehended and returned to custody. She was rebooked on her original charge of possession of a stolen vehicle and faced an additional charge related to her escape from the detention facility. Number 4. Abigail Graff and Tegan Simpson. In September 2017, 21-year-old Abigail Graff and 24-year-old Tegan Simpson were inmates at the Newmanbaugh Correctional Center, a low-security prison farm in Queensland's Gold Coast hinterland. Abigail was detained for assaulting police, while Tegan was serving time for receiving stolen goods. The correctional officers discovered them missing during a routine night head count. After 8 days on the run, Abigail was apprehended at a residence in Moorina, Moreton Bay region, over 150 kilometers from the correctional facility. She was charged with 1 count of escaping lawful custody. Tegan was never apprehended until 18 days later when she was arrested at a home in Carindale, Brisbane, approximately 90 kilometers north of the prison. She also faced charges for escaping. Number 5. Linda Darby. In 1970, Linda Darby, a resident of Hammond, Indiana, was convicted of the murder of her husband, Charles R. Darby. Charles was found deceased in their home, having been shot with a 12-gauge firearm. The perpetrator attempted to conceal the crime by setting the bedroom on fire using gasoline. Evidence, including a shotgun linked to Linda and witness testimonies, led to her conviction. She was sentenced to life imprisonment for her husband's murder. After serving approximately 2 years, Linda escaped from the Indiana Women's Prison in March 1972 by scaling a barbed wire fence, sustaining injuries in the process. She fled to Indianapolis and eventually settled in Pulaski, Tennessee, under the alias Linda Jo McElroy. In Pulaski, she led a law-abiding life. She got married and was raising 2 children. Neighbors and local authorities described her as a model citizen, without any known criminal activity during her time there. Linda remained a fugitive for 35 years until her arrest in October 2007. Her capture was facilitated by the Indiana Department of Corrections Fugitive Apprehension Unit, which cross-referenced data and discovered her alias. Local Pulaski police, who had known her as a respectable member of the community, were involved in her apprehension. Following her arrest, Linda was extradited to Indiana to continue serving her life sentence. As of March 2025, Linda Darby has served an additional 17 years since her recapture, bringing her total time served to approximately 19 years. Number 6. Joanne Deborah Chessard. Joanne Deborah Chessard, also known as Assata Shakur, is an American political activist and former member of the Black Liberation Army who was serving a life sentence for shooting to death of a New Jersey trooper, Werner Forster. On the day of the crime, Chessard and 2 associates were stopped for a motor vehicle violation on the New Jersey Turnpike by state troopers Werner Forster and James Harper. During the stop, a confrontation ensued, resulting in a shootout. Trooper Harper was wounded. Trooper Forster was killed, and one of Chessard's associates, Zaid Malik Shakur, also died. Chessard was wounded and apprehended. At the time, she was wanted for her involvement in several felonies, including bank robbery. Her escape from prison happened when a group of the Black Liberation Army members visited the prison where she was held and seized 2 correctional officers and held them hostage with firearms until they got a prison vehicle and escaped. No one was injured or shot during the escape. She lived underground until she moved to Cuba, where she was granted a political asylum and has not been captured since she escaped. Number 7. Judy Lynn Haymon. In 1976, Judy Lynn Haymon, then 23 years old, was convicted of attempting to shoplift from a Detroit area store. She was sentenced to serve between 16 and 24 months at the Women's Huron Valley Correctional Facility in Ypsilanti, Michigan. After serving approximately 10 months, Haymon escaped from the facility on April 14, 1977. Authorities suggested she may have simply walked away from the unfenced facility. After escaping, Haymon adopted a new name, Jamie Lewis, and eventually settled in San Diego, California. She led a relatively quiet life, raising 3 sons and participating in community activities such as PTA meetings and church events. Her neighbors described her as a reserved individual who seemed somewhat paranoid and kept to herself. In early 2014, the Michigan Department of Corrections Apprehensions Unit revisited cold cases of prison escapees from the 1960s and 1970s. Utilizing fingerprints from prior arrests in San Diego, they tracked Haymon to her residence. On February 3, 2014, San Diego police officers arrested her at her apartment in the Balboa Park area. Initially, Haymon identified herself as Jamie Lewis and presented supporting documents, but she eventually admitted her true identity. However, subsequent investigations revealed that Haymon had voluntarily surrendered to Michigan authorities in 1982 and was sentenced to time already served. Due to the lack of records for the 1976 case and her prior resolution with the court, charges against her were dropped. On March 14, 2014, After spending 5 weeks in jail, a San Diego judge ordered her release. Number 8. Kiana Barnes. In 2003, Kiana Barnes, a resident of New Orleans, Louisiana, was involved in 2 separate homicides. In March 2003, Barnes fatally shot Perry Jennings Jr., a U.S. Air Force veteran, while he was sleeping in his New Orleans apartment. Following the murder, Barnes fled to Mexico, where she was later apprehended and extradited back to the United States. Prior to this incident, in 2002, Barnes was implicated in the stabbing to death of Jimmy Chessard. She was arrested for this crime, but was released when charges were not filed within the required 60-day period. In 2004, Barnes pleaded guilty to 2 counts of manslaughter for the deaths of Jennings and Chessard. She was sentenced to 25 years in prison. After serving approximately 8 years, Barnes escaped from the Louisiana Correctional Institute for Women in St. Gabriel on January 1, 2013. She broke a dorm room window, climbed out, and then scaled multiple perimeter fences, one of which was topped with barbed wire, sustaining injuries in the process. Following her escape, Barnes was placed on the U.S. Marshals Service's 15 Most Wanted Fugitive list. She remained at large for nearly 3 months. On March 25, 2013, 2 Los Angeles Police Department officers recognized her near 5th and Hill Streets in downtown Los Angeles. After intensive questioning, Barnes revealed her identity and was taken into custody. As of March 2025, Kiana Barnes has served approximately 20 years of her 25-year sentence. Number 9. Margaret B. Smith. In 1974, Margaret B. Smith, a mother of 7 from Fayetteville, North Carolina, was convicted of writing over $200 in worthless checks to local department stores. Initially, she was sentenced to probation. She violated its terms by committing additional offenses, leading to a 4-year prison sentence on October 14, 1976. After serving approximately 3 months at the North Carolina Correctional Institution for Women in Raleigh, Smith was transferred to a halfway house in Robeson County, where she worked cleaning motel rooms. In February 1977, about a month into her stay, and with roughly 2 months remaining on her sentence, Smith escaped after being visited by a then 7-year-old daughter. She hitchhiked back to Fayetteville. After escaping, Smith lived under her maiden name, Margaret Vallius, and resided in Florida for a period before returning to Fayetteville. She maintained a low profile, avoiding further criminal activity, and became an active member of the Strickland Bridge Road Church of God, volunteering in various capacities. In May 2015, after 38 years on the run, an FBI task force focusing on long-term escapees apprehended Smith at her Fayetteville home. She was taken into custody without resistance. She was placed in solitary confinement for 45 days, as per standard procedure for escapees. Number 10. Jessica Graham. In June 2021, Jessica C. Graham, then 40 years old, was sentenced to a 5-year prison term for third-degree criminal mischief involving fire-related damages exceeding $2,000 in Union County, New Jersey. She was incarcerated at the Edna Mahan Correctional Facility for Women in Union Township, Wine, New Jersey. On October 31, 2021, Graham was reported missing during a routine headcount. At the time of her escape, she had served approximately 4 months, with about 3 years remaining on her sentence. Following her escape, a search was carried out, and she was apprehended hours later near a restaurant in Clinton, New Jersey, by the Clinton Township Police Department. Number 11. Sarah Jo Pender. In October 2000, 21-year-old Sarah Jo Pender from Indiana was implicated in the double homicide of her roommates, Andrew Cataldi and Tricia Nordman. Sarah had recently begun dating Richard Hull, a convicted felon and a substance dealer. The couple shared a residence with Cataldi and Nordman. On the morning of October 24, 2000, Sarah purchased a 12-gauge firearm and ammunition from a local Walmart at Hull's request, as he was legally prohibited from buying firearms due to his criminal record. That evening, an argument happened between Hull and Cataldi over financial matters. During the confrontation, Hull used the recently acquired weapon to fatally shoot both Cataldi and Nordman. Upon returning home and discovering the murders, Sarah assisted Hull in disposing of the bodies by accompanying him as he transported them to a secluded area in Indianapolis. She did not report the incident to the authorities. They were implicated and arrested. Sarah was convicted on 2 counts of murder and sentenced to 110 years in prison. Her conviction was largely based on a letter purportedly written by her, confessing to orchestrating the murders. She has consistently maintained her innocence, claiming the letter was fabricated. After serving approximately 6 years, she escaped from the Rockville Correctional Facility on August 4, 2008. She planned the escape with the assistance of Scott Spittler, a corrections officer, and Jamie Long, a former cellmate. Spittler, who had developed a personal relationship with her, agreed to help her in exchange for $15,000. He provided her with civilian clothing and a cell phone to facilitate the plan. On the day of the escape, Pender changed into the civilian attire, concealed herself in a prison transport van driven by Spittler, and was driven out of the facility without detection. Once outside, she was picked up by Long and transported to Indianapolis. Following her escape, she was featured on America's Most Wanted and added to the U.S. Marshals' 15 Most Wanted Fugitives list. She remained at large for over 4 months, adopting the name Ashley Thompson and residing in Chicago, where she secured employment as an estimator for a contractor. On December 22, 2008, after a rerun of the America's Most Wanted episode, a neighbor recognized her and alerted authorities. Chicago police apprehended Pender at her apartment without resistance. As a consequence of her escape, she was placed in solitary confinement for nearly 5 years. Number 12. Samantha Derinda Lopez. In 1981, Samantha Derinda Lopez, then 32 years old, was convicted for her involvement in a series of bank robberies and kidnappings across Alabama, Georgia, and Florida. Alongside her husband, Carl Lopez, and accomplices, she participated in crimes that included holding a banker's family hostage in Mobile, Alabama, and attempting a similar scheme in Orange Park, Florida. Their criminal activities spread to Unadilla, Georgia, where they were apprehended after executing another extortion plot. Lopez was sentenced to 50 years in federal prison for these offenses. While incarcerated at the Federal Correctional Institution in Pleasanton, California, she met Ronald J. McIntosh, a fellow inmate serving time for defrauding investors out of $18 million in gold coins and securities. The two developed a romantic relationship during their imprisonment. On October 28, 1986, McIntosh escaped custody while being transferred unescorted to another facility, a privilege granted due to his status as a model prisoner. A week later, on November 5, 1986, McIntosh executed a daring plan to free Lopez. He rented a helicopter under the pretense of conducting aerial surveys near the prison. Once airborne, he commandeered the aircraft at gunpoint, forced the pilot to land on a mountain peak to disembark, and then flew the helicopter to Pleasanton. There, he hovered over the recreation yard, allowing Lopez to board before flying away. Prison guards, adhering to a policy against firing at aircraft to avoid endangering potential innocents, did not intervene with gunfire. The couple remained fugitives for 11 days. Their freedom ended on November 15, 1986, when U.S. Marshals, acting on a tip, arrested them at the Birdcage Walk shopping center in Citrus Heights, California. They were attempting to purchase wedding rings at a jewelry store. During the arrest, McIntosh attempted to access a briefcase containing firearms, but was subdued before he could do so. In May 1987, a federal jury convicted McIntosh of air piracy, aiding an escape, and use of a weapon, leading to a sentence ranging from 30 years to life. Lopez was found guilty of escape, adding a 5-year sentence to her existing 50-year term. Number 13. Squeaky Fromme. In September 1975, Lynette Squeaky Fromme, a devoted follower of Charles Manson, attempted to assassinate President Gerald Ford in Sacramento, California. Dressed in a distinctive red robe, Fromme approached President Ford in Capitol Park, drew a .45 caliber semi-automatic pistol, and aimed it at him. The weapon's magazine was loaded with 4 rounds, but there was no round in the chamber. Secret Service agent Larry Buendorf swiftly intervened, restraining Fromme before any shots were fired. As she was subdued, Fromme reportedly exclaimed, "It didn't go off, can you believe it? It didn't go off." Following her arrest, Fromme was charged with attempted assassination of the President of the United States. During her trial, she was uncooperative with her defense team, and at one point threw an apple at the U.S. attorney prosecuting her case. In November 1975, Fromme was convicted and sentenced to life imprisonment under a 1965 law that mandated such a penalty for attempted presidential assassinations. In December 1987, after serving approximately 12 years, Fromme escaped from the federal prison camp Alderson in West Virginia. Her escape was reportedly motivated by news that Charles Manson was dying of cancer, prompting her to attempt to reunite with him. Fromme was recaptured 2 days later, on December 25, 1987, about 2 miles from the prison after a massive search operation. As a consequence of her escape, Fromme received an additional 15-year sentence, which was added to her life term. Thank you for watching. Should prisoners be returned back to prison after being caught trying to escape? Comment below.